Daniel was the kind of person people rarely noticed. He sat quietly in the back corner of the classroom, always hoping the teacher would not call his name. When other students laughed loudly, shared stories, or answered questions confidently, Daniel stayed silent. He often felt like there was an invisible wall between him and everyone else. He was not lazy. He was not unintelligent. He was simply afraid of making mistakes, afraid of sounding stupid, afraid of being judged. Every morning, Daniel walked into school carrying a heavy feeling inside his chest. He compared himself to everyone around him. Why can they speak so easily? He wondered, why do they look so confident? What is wrong with me? The truth was that Daniel had spent years believing he was not good enough. When he was younger, he once gave the wrong answer during class. A few students laughed. The teacher quickly moved on. But Daniel never forgot the embarrassment he felt that day. After that moment, he stopped raising his hand. Then there was the time he tried joining the basketball team. During practice, he missed an easy shot, and one of the older boys rolled his eyes. "You're terrible," the boy said. Daniel pretended not to care, but the words stayed in his mind for years. Little by little, those experiences became part of his identity. He stopped trying new things. He stopped speaking up. He stopped believing in himself. By the time he turned 17, fear had become his normal life. One rainy afternoon, Daniel sat alone in the library after school. He had no real reason to stay there except that he did not want to go home yet. The rain hit softly against the windows while students slowly left the building. As he walked through the rows of bookshelves, one book caught his attention. The title read, "The Mountain Inside You." Daniel picked it up and sat near the window. The first sentence he read said, "Most battles are won long before the world sees them." He frowned slightly. The book explained how many people believed confidence was something people were born with. But true confidence was usually built slowly through discomfort, failure, and repetition. Daniel kept reading. One line especially stayed in his mind. Fear grows when avoided. Confidence grows when practiced. He stared at the sentence for a long time. It sounded simple, but it felt powerful. For the first time in years, Daniel wondered if maybe he was not trapped forever. Maybe confidence was not a gift only lucky people received. Maybe it was a skill. That night, he could not stop thinking about the book. Before sleeping, he opened a notebook and wrote,
Day 1, I want to change. The next morning felt normal at first. Students filled the classroom with noise and conversation. Daniel sat quietly at his desk as usual. Then the teacher asked a question about the homework assignment. Daniel knew the answer immediately. His heart began beating faster. Part of him wanted to look down and stay invisible. But another part remembered the sentence from the book. Confidence grows when practiced. Slowly, almost painfully, Daniel raised his hand. The teacher looked surprised. Yes, Daniel. His throat felt dry. He answered quietly. The teacher smiled. Correct. That was all. No one laughed. No one stared at him strangely. The world did not collapse. Yet inside Daniel, something small had changed. For the rest of the day, he kept replaying the moment in his mind. It was such a tiny action, but to him it felt enormous. That evening, he wrote in his notebook again. Day 2, I raised my hand today. I was nervous, but I survived. Over the next few weeks, Daniel continued doing small, uncomfortable things. He greeted the cashier at convenience stores instead of avoiding eye contact. He asked classmates simple questions. He practiced speaking louder when ordering food. At first, every action felt terrifying. Sometimes his voice shook. Sometimes he felt awkward. Sometimes he replayed conversations repeatedly in his head afterward. But slowly, the fear became weaker. Daniel began noticing something important. Most people were too busy thinking about themselves to judge him as harshly as he imagined. One afternoon during lunch break, his classmate Mia sat across from him unexpectedly. "Why do you always sit alone?" she asked casually. Daniel almost panicked. Normally, he would have given a short answer and ended the conversation immediately. But this time, he forced himself to continue talking. "I guess I'm just quiet," he said. Mia smiled. "You seem thoughtful, not just quiet." Daniel blinked. No one had ever described him that way before. They continued talking for nearly 20 minutes. The conversation was simple: music, school, favorite movies, but when it ended, Daniel realized something shocking. He had actually enjoyed himself. That night, he wrote, Day 19, maybe people are not as scary as I thought. Weeks turned into months. Daniel still struggled with insecurity. But something inside him was changing little by little. Confidence was no longer an impossible dream. It was becoming a process. Then came the announcement that changed everything. The school principal entered Daniel's classroom one morning. This year, she announced, each class must choose one student representative to give a speech during graduation week. Immediately, students began whispering excitedly. Daniel looked down at his desk, hoping no attention would come toward him. Then someone said, Daniel should do it. His eyes widened. It was Mia. Several students nodded in agreement. He's smart. He speaks clearly now. Yeah, Daniel should try. Daniel's stomach twisted. No. Absolutely not. Speaking in front of the entire school sounded impossible. The teacher smiled. What do you think, Daniel? Every fear inside him screamed for escape. His heart pounded loudly. He imagined forgetting his words. He imagined students laughing. He imagined embarrassing himself in front of everyone. Then he remembered another line from the book. The life you want exists beyond the fear you avoid. Daniel swallowed hard. I'll try, he whispered. The moment he said it, panic rushed through his body. For the rest of the day, he regretted agreeing. What was I thinking? He muttered repeatedly. That evening, he nearly sent a message saying he'd changed his mind. But instead, he opened his notebook. He stared at all the previous entries. Day after day. Small fears. Small victories. For the first time, he realized how far he had already come. Maybe this was simply the next step. So he began preparing. At first, writing the speech felt impossible. Every sentence sounded terrible to him. He deleted paragraphs repeatedly. He compared himself to famous speakers online and felt inadequate. But eventually, he stopped trying to sound perfect. Instead, he decided to speak honestly. His speech became about fear, growth, and believing in yourself even when confidence feels impossible. Every evening, he practiced. At first, he could barely finish without stumbling. His hands shook constantly. Sometimes frustration overwhelmed him. One night, he threw his notebook onto the bed. "I can't do this," he said angrily. His older sister Emma heard him. She knocked softly on his door. What happened? Daniel explained everything. Emma listened quietly before speaking. "You know," she said, "confidence isn't about never being scared." Daniel sighed. "Then what is it?" "It's deciding something matters more than your fear." Her words stayed with him. The next day, he practiced again. And again. And again. Slowly, improvement came. His voice became stronger. His posture improved. His breathing became calmer. Not perfect, but better. The night before the speech, Daniel barely slept. His mind imagined disaster after disaster. The next morning, the school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Students, teachers, and parents filled the seats. Daniel waited backstage, trying not to panic. His palms were sweaty. His breathing felt uneven. Part of him wanted to run away immediately. Then the principal announced his name. "Please welcome Daniel Carter." The applause sounded distant as he walked toward the stage. The bright lights blinded him for a moment. Hundreds of faces stared back at him. Fear crashed into him like a wave. His mind went blank. For several painful seconds, he stood silently behind the microphone. The old Daniel wanted to give up. The old Daniel wanted to disappear. But then he noticed something unexpected. Many students looked nervous for him. Some smiled encouragingly. Mia gave him a thumbs up from the front row. Suddenly, Daniel realized something important. Nobody wanted him to fail. They wanted him to succeed. He took a slow breath. Then he began. "When I was younger," he said shakily, "I believed confidence was something other people were born with." The room became quiet. As he continued speaking, something strange happened. His fear did not disappear completely, but it stopped controlling him. Sentence by sentence, he grew steadier. He spoke about insecurity, about fear, about staying silent for years because he believed he was not enough. Many students listened carefully. Some nodded quietly. Some looked emotional. Daniel realized he was not the only person who felt afraid sometimes. Near the end of the speech, he said, "For most of my life, I thought confidence meant being fearless. But now I understand something different. Confidence is taking one small step even while fear walks beside you." The room stayed completely silent. Then he finished with these words, "You do not become confident before you begin. You become confident because you begin." For 1 second, everything was still. Then the entire auditorium exploded into applause. Daniel stood frozen. The sound felt unreal. Students stood up clapping. Teachers smiled proudly. Even the principal wiped tears from her eyes. Daniel felt emotion rise inside his chest. Not because he gave a perfect speech, but because he had done something he once believed was impossible. After the ceremony, many students approached him. One boy said quietly, "I thought I was the only person who felt that way." Another student said, "Your speech helped me." Daniel walked home that evening feeling different. Not suddenly fearless. Not magically transformed into a completely new person, but stronger. For the first time in his life, he truly believed growth was possible. Months passed after graduation. Daniel continued practicing confidence in everyday life. He joined a public speaking club at college. He introduced himself to new people. He volunteered for presentations instead of hiding from them. Sometimes he still felt nervous. Sometimes insecurity returned. But now he understood something powerful. Confidence was not a destination where fear disappeared forever. It was a relationship with yourself. It was learning to trust yourself even when uncertainty existed. Years later, Daniel became a mentor for teenagers struggling with self-esteem and anxiety. One afternoon, a shy student named Leo stayed behind after a workshop. "I want to be confident like you," Leo admitted quietly. Daniel smiled softly. "You know something funny," he said. "What?" "I used to think confident people were completely different from me." Leo looked surprised. "But you speak so easily now." Daniel laughed gently. "It wasn't always like this." Then he told Leo about the scared 17-year-old boy who could barely raise his hand in class. Leo listened carefully. "So how did you change?" he asked. Daniel thought for a moment before answering. "I stopped waiting to feel confident before taking action." Leo frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Daniel picked up a small stone from the ground nearby. "Imagine you want to climb a mountain," he said. "Most people wait until they feel strong enough before starting. But strength actually comes from climbing." Leo looked thoughtful. "So confidence comes after?" "Exactly." Daniel smiled. Every difficult conversation, every mistake, every scary moment, they are part of the climb. Years earlier, Daniel believed fear was proof he could not succeed. Now he understood something completely different. Fear was often proof that growth was happening. As the sun slowly set outside the classroom window, Daniel realized something beautiful. The mountain inside him had never truly disappeared. There would always be new fears, new challenges, new moments of doubt. But now he knew he could climb. And that changed everything forever. Daniel was a quiet and insecure student who was afraid of speaking, making mistakes, and being judged by others because of bad experiences in the past. He stopped believing in himself and avoided difficult situations. One day, he found a book called The Mountain Inside You, which taught him that confidence is not something people are born with. It is something built through practice and courage. Daniel started taking small steps to improve himself. He raised his hand in class, talked to classmates, and practiced speaking more confidently. Although he still felt nervous, he slowly became stronger. Later, Daniel was chosen to give a speech at school. At first, he was terrified and wanted to quit. But he continued practicing every day. When the day came, he stood on stage and spoke honestly about fear and confidence. His speech inspired many people because they realized they were not alone in their insecurities. In the end, Daniel understood that confidence does not come before action. Confidence grows after you take action, even when you are afraid. Message of the story: Asterisk confidence is built little by little through practice. Asterisk fear does not mean you are weak. It means you are growing. Asterisk you do not need to be perfect to succeed. Asterisk small steps can change your life. Asterisk the most important thing is to keep trying, even when you feel scared. Powerful quote from the story: You do not become confident before you begin. You become confident because you begin.